Let me at least call this meeting to order before people at home don't understand what's going on. All right, so
Mr. Fowler on
time
board?
being 7:08 on April
I have
6th,
not seen him yet.
2020.
I know
Quorum
Steve
of the
was
planning board being
working,
present
trying
at
to
this
get him
time.
on.
I'll call this meeting to
Yeah,
order.
Jason, can you or
I think at this point we
Ryan
are
try to get him
awaiting
on?
one more
I know
of
he
the
was
members
talking with you
arrival
earlier before we
to
lost.
pick up our first item on the agenda. While we wait for them to work out the logistics for fourth number, I'll kind of jump ahead and ask, or at least I was asked today to discuss with the members whether or not we would consider adding a meeting in May in place of when we don't have town meeting anymore, and conducting a meeting in June. That way, we're able to try and get a little bit more of the kind of backed up work that we have on the agenda done. But where when we postponed town meeting, we normally only hold one meeting in May because of that. Technically, the night that we have town meeting, we're in session. But in this case, since town meeting's been moved, we could have a meeting that week, and then give us 2 meetings in May to work on what we have outstanding on the agenda. So I don't know, Mr. Ryder, I don't know what your thoughts on that might be.
I'm okay with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
What night are you proposing? I'm just trying to. Are you proposing the May 4th date, or you?
I would think that would make the most sense because theoretically that's the one on all of our calendars that would have been marked off in advance.
Sure.
Just it's just as a filler now because we don't have the town meeting. So if that's okay,
No,
I'd like to use that one.
Sure, that absolutely. That prior to, I did have another meeting that night, but I'm free since a lot of meetings have been pushed around.
Okay. Mr. Patalia?
Yeah, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a problem with that. I can work that through my schedule.
All right, I will check Mr. Fowler once we have him on board. If he's all right with that. I think as some of us have discussed offline, our thoughts are with Mr. Delaney and his family as he continues to hopefully recover and get back to us as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
I guess we can take this a little out of, there's no real order because we only have the one item tonight while we're waiting for this, but is there anything else anyone needed to discuss? Logistics, scheduling, or anything like that anybody wants to discuss while we're waiting?
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Ann McGinty, the town planner. For June, do you want to remove one of those meetings or change the dates? For example, it's scheduled currently as June 8th and June 22nd. You could change the dates to only have one meeting, say June 15th, or you could just take off one of those dates.
All right, let me ask, I'll go back around. I think I just saw Mr. Fowler pop up. So let me just run back through that. Mr. Fowler, do we have you there?
Yes.
All right. So while we're waiting for you to get on, I had just jumped to an item that Anna had asked me about today. And that was with the town meeting having been postponed, the suggestion was, in this case, we'd be scheduling us a meeting on the 4th, as we would have been there otherwise, to work on the agenda items we have, and drop a meeting in June. Would you have any issue with that?
Nope.
All right, so then the idea would be to add May 4th. Then the next question to the members would be, do we deduct one of the scheduled meetings, either the 8th or the 22nd, or do we deduct both and just make it June 15th? Does anybody have any feelings one way or the other?
You're talking May 8th and May?
No, the June meetings.
Oh.
Mr. Chairman, do you think, should we kind of wait a week and see with what's happening? I'm just concerned.
That's what I thought originally.
if this gets pushed out any longer, I don't know what our schedule's gonna be like, but I'll do whatever the board feels.
That's what I had thought originally. So what I would suggest then is, why don't we leave the June 8th meeting in place?
Okay,
So now we could cancel the June 22nd meeting, but if we get into those May meetings and we feel like we need to put it back, we can do that. Does that work for everybody, rather than reinventing the wheel and, creating new dates?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, so then what I'll do is, could I have a motion to schedule a meeting on May 4th and to deduct our meeting on June 22nd?
So moved.
I have a motion made. Do I have a second? I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Chair votes aye as well. All those opposed? Seeing none. Okay, we've adopted those two changes. All right, so now that we have all our members present, we'll go to agenda item A, which is 984, 970, 986 Main Street, which is the Center Fire Station. Site plan special permit and special permit continued from our last meeting. As a reminder to our audience members, the call-in number is 978-771-0818. And they'll queue you up, and you'll have an opportunity to speak when we get to the public comment section. If for some reason we have 3 people queued up, that's the limit for the amount we can have queued up at a time. So if you can't get through, as we drop someone who does speak, you should be able to get on. We'll give you time in order to do that. For those looking to watch at home, the Comcast channel is 99 and the Verizon channel is channel 33. I'll also ask anyone who is not speaking or likely to speak while someone else is presenting, if you please mute your phones so that we don't catch any of the background noise. It gets a little distracting for everybody. So anyone who doesn't expect to be talking, if you could just mute your either your phone or your computer at this time. With that, I will turn it over to the petitioners. If you just state your names for the record, the floor will be yours.
Mr. Chairman, this is Richard Montori, Town Manager. I am going to hand over the first part of the meeting presentation to the design team and let them start with their presentation.
Very good. Who do we have from the design team?
We have Janet Slemenda from HKT Architects.
All right, if you're ready to present, the floor is yours.
We're going to ask Lance. He'll present first.
Okay. Do we have Lance? I see his name, but I see him muted.
Hey, Lance.
I see his video.
The speaker is off.
All right. Well, he seems to be having some technical difficulties. Is there a way we can reorder who's presenting? That's not going to work.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Lance, you are.
No.
No.
We get some audio in one place. We have an everything problem in Lance's place, it looks like.
Lance doesn't.
All right. We seem to be at a standstill here.
We do have somebody on the line if you'd like to take a call.
I would, but I'm afraid we haven't heard anything yet, so I don't know if they've heard anything that they want to, I mean, if they're commenting from a previous meeting, that's fine. But if they were waiting to comment after the presentation, I'd hate to pull them off and have them speak about, we haven't taken any comments yet this evening. Yeah, your audio is terrible. I don't know what that is, but it's making it sound like you're using like a voice altering. So that's coming through badly.
Janet, I think you have to log out and try to log back. Yeah. All right, I'll log out.
Oh, my God.
All right. Well, I honestly thought that we had some of our bugs worked out after the last meeting, but I don't know that that's the case. Could we check with the caller and see if the caller had comments they wanted to make that were generic, or if they were waiting to hear presentation this evening?
Their comment is on the location, an opinion on the location.
Okay. Well, I guess we could sort of take it out of order. If they choose to call back, I will obviously not hold them to the one call. Don't we won't hold them to the one chance at speaking, obviously. So why don't we take the caller and see what they have to say? We have the caller.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound much better now.
Oh, great.
You're on.
All right, so we have a caller.
Listen,
Wait, hold on 1 second, sir. Sir? Sir? Sir?
I was very disappointed to see that they were taking a
Mute the caller, please.
behind the almost hiding it in the water.
Okay. Hold on. We need to have the caller muted for a second. Is the caller muted? Can you please let the caller know that they have to give their name and address before they begin speaking? And then to the rest of the folks, we're definitely getting background noise. I don't think it was coming off the caller. So if we can mute as many of us as possible while they're speaking, it'll take care of some of that background noise, and then, we can speak once they're done and they can comment. Is that all right? All right, so if we could try the caller again. We have the caller?
We have the caller.
All right. Sir, if you could give your name and your address, and then you'll have an opportunity to discuss whatever you want to discuss.
Okay, my name is John Joyce. I live at Sandalwood Circle and here in Tewksbury. I've been a resident for 20 years. I'm experienced. I'm a firefighter for 37 years in the city. And when I heard about where they were located in the fire station up behind the bank, I was very disappointed with their choice of location, mainly because they're taking the fire station out of the view of the public. And I know from past experience that having a fire station where people can see it when they drive by, and when they're looking for an emergency, a phone call, directions, and everything like that, hiding it back behind a building and in the bank, to me, is not a very good choice of location. I know that when I worked, we would get people coming in for all types of street information. We had fire alarm boxes, which they don't have here, and somebody that's trying to report something is looking for a fire station. He may not be English speaking, and he can't call on the cell phone because nobody understands him. I don't think they have interpreters here. And I think that your choice of taking a fire station and putting it that far back out of the view of the public is a very bad idea. That's my opinion on the whole thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Do you have anything else?
Okay. I'll
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. So I'm hoping that we have some of the presenters back now. Am I correct?
Hi, this is Lance from Par Corporation.
Oh, that sounds terrific, Lance. Let's try again then with the presentation. You're up.
All right, great. Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. When last we were here, we had the remaining question was, had we looked into relocating the building to occupy some additional piece of the McDonald parcel. So I wanted to share that with you here, if I can. Bear with me 1 second. I'm looking to try to share this.
Has the host made you a presenter, Lance?
Yes,
Okay,
it should be there. Here we go.
okay.
So we looked at a couple of different locations. One, this first option here was taking the existing building as it's currently laid out and simply relocating it a little closer to the street, occupying some of the McDonald parcel. One of the challenges, as you can see here, is that on the ingress and as well as the egress that you'll see on the next slide, when the fire truck is coming back to the station, he must pull in here and reverse back across. Essentially what happens in this case and all the next few slides that you're going to see is it creates an issue whereby vehicles have to travel across the apron to get to access parking lots in the rear. When the fire truck is coming back from its run and has to reverse in this direction here, that creates an issue for any vehicle that has entered into this area and trying to get back to the rear parking area that the fire truck is going to be backing in and across the lanes of travel here, which we don't think is a very good solution and causes some issues. What likely that will happen is cause some retiming of the proposed signal that's going in here, that it may end up that the signal has to utilize the Opticom on the return from service, thereby shutting down this intersection to prevent anybody from accessing into the driveway portion. So that is going to tie up traffic not only upon a fire truck leaving, but also upon a fire truck returning. So you're going to see a similar type of issue on several of these next options here, but I wanted to point that out here to you. This is the same option that we were just discussing. This is the fire truck that would be leaving the bay. You can see here the truck has to pull out and into the lane, the exiting drive lane. Doesn't quite cross the island here, but certainly impacts the lane of travel upon exiting. The next concept that was laid out was a similar concept, but pushing the building a little further back and providing some parking out in front here. Still, we have the same issue here where the truck comes in, has to reverse back into the bay. We showed here a different bay of travel for the truck. It certainly can be looked at a couple of different positions, but we chose this one here to show what would happen when the truck coming all the way up here, blocking this drive aisle and reversing back into the third bay. This is the same viewport with that fire truck leaving that bay, coming out. In this case, he actually does cross the island and would be impacting vehicles that were coming into the site. The other two options that we took a look at is what would happen if you were able to utilize the McDonald parcel to reduce the footprint of the building. I mean the number of stories of the building. If that were the case, of course, the building gets a little bit longer in order to accommodate that. The ladder truck suffers the same concerns when they're exiting in and out. You still have to cross the apron to get in and out of the building. But what this does is it really eats up a lot more of the overall parcel, rendering almost the entire parcel building and its associated driveway. This viewport shows the same again with the fire truck exiting the middle bay and making its turn out onto Main Street. You can see here again the building occupies a considerable portion of both parcels in this case. And then finally, we took a look at what would happen if the couple of bays were facing South Main Street, and the remaining portion of the administrative portion of the building was behind it. You see here, it does push the building a little closer to the street, but as you can see here, fire trucks, we showed them coming in a couple of different directions, different ways. Essentially what happens here is it really makes this driveway here for the general public and for the apron bay, it makes this extremely wide, where you're going to have signals on both sides of it and a very big apron and curb cut along Main Street. The fire truck here would have to come in here and make almost a 180-degree turn before reversing into the building, or exiting from the building at that same location. You can see here that we'll come out here and we'll have to really potentially make an island out here that is flush or scaled back, causing these two driveways side by each here. Typically, Mass DOT, this would exceed what they would approve in terms of a curb cut, and we have two curb cuts side by side here, so that would be problematic with our discussions with Mass DOT. We're showing one other way of entering into the building here, where the fire truck comes in here and the ladder truck comes in, pulls in, and then reverses back into the bay in here. What he has to do in this case is cross two lanes of the driveway. I don't think that that's a very good solution in this case, but we wanted to show you what that might look like. Same way here, the ladder truck making the left turn has to come in and make a swoop across both lanes of the ingress and the egress, and then reverse back into the bay. And finally, we wanted to show what it would look like if, maybe we closed up this apron a little bit, or we really forced the truck to come out here and make a true right turn from the exiting driveway, and it shows up how that might look. Very strange, awkward intersection. Certainly crosses the double yellow in this case, but knowing that signals will be on both sides of the driveway here, would probably address that. And one last item that we took a look at is what would happen. What is one option that may happen with a fire station located in its current state, and if this were incorporated into the project at some point. We're showing one option that is sort of a parklet with some additional apparatus parking in this area, and
Lance, we can't see anything.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
You can't see this slide?
No.
All right, let me see if I can share it here. See if I can't share this here. Is this better here? Can you see that now?
Yes.
All right, so just to reiterate, in this case here, we showed one option of what might happen if the McDonald parcel was to be incorporated in the park into the project in the future. And what we're showing here is a parklet with some apparatus bay parking along this side, some access that would come in from the sidewalk out here, and utilize this as a typical park with granite benches, maybe a small wall leading into a larger, stepping up to a larger sign in this area, and some vegetative parking bed that would give this a little bit more privacy, potentially, but not really shield the station overall. So we wanted to share those options with you as they had been asked for at the last planning board meeting. And I was wondering if there's any questions that anybody may have.
All right, so let's start with Mr. Ryder. Mr. Ryder. Let me start with Mr. Fowler then.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, that's a lot to take in, but a couple of those plans look very good, although the exits, I can't use a word like this, convoluted. I know you're trying to do the best you have with what you have, but I was down in Wellesley to look at their station last week, and Wellesley has, I think it's 6 bays, and they go straight out. Why do we have to have a curb? Whereas instead of, a small, why do we have to have a small entrance and exit? Why can't we have a wide open curb cut? Did you hear me, Lance?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you can see my screen here.
Yes, I can.
So your question was on the last one?
Well, a couple of them, yes. Most of the last ones, yes. Instead of having that island in the middle, why couldn't you have just a straight curb cut? So the apparatus, whether they go left, right, or straight, in from which bay, why can't they just come out in a straight fashion? And while I've got you, I did a quick measurement here on the screen, and I wonder why the building as designed couldn't be halfway down, let's say, the whole parcel. McDonald's in the parcel we have, and then drive straight out. That way there'd be enough room to drive in, make a circle on the apron, and then back into the garage doors. If you follow what I'm saying, that's...
I do. I think this is the one that you're talking about here.
Well, if you had all the doors facing, well, that could be, but could you put the building facing the street, all 6 doors facing the street, and still have room on the right to get to the back part of it with a driveway?
No, I believe the answer to that question is no, you can't. Not apart from where it is sitting now, as currently designed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just wanted to make a point that we might want to make to any of the audience watching.
Yes.
The layouts that we are showing and the options that we are showing are on a piece of land that the town does not own, does not have an option to own, and doesn't have a purchase and sale agreement to own.
Okay.
I just don't want people thinking we own that entire parcel.
No, that's fine. So the clarification, as the town manager has asked, from our last meeting, there's a request that the designers show other possibilities for the way the parcel could be laid out in the event that the parcel in the front left, which is currently owned, privately owned, were acquired. We do, as town manager pointed out, We do not control that parcel. The town does not control that parcel, does not own that parcel, and at present does not have any ability to purchase that parcel. This was a request from the board or to look at some other layouts in the event that that parcel were part of the project to see how the layouts might work. They're just examples. They're not, at this point, not alternative plans other than something for review at this point. So I hope that clarifies it to anyone who might be just joining us this time and didn't see our last meeting. So with that, Mr. Fowler, I'll return to you.
I guess a lot of your work, Lance, was for naught, because if there's no chance that we're going to be able to get the McDonald property expeditiously, then where do we go from here? I guess that's to you, Richard.
Bob, it's really where we've been from the beginning, which is the current parcel that we own and that we're presenting the design on. We just don't have any indication that we're going to own the McDonald property anytime soon. But the board asked for those options and we provided them.
Mr. Fowler, do you have anything else on this portion of the presentation?
He's muted right now, Stephen.
Oh, Mr. Fowler, do you have anything else that you want to add on this portion of the presentation?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Were you all set for this part, or did you have something else, Mr. Fowler?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fratalia. Meeting is finished. All right, we'll change our order again. We'll go to Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to everyone for putting these together. And also thank you, Mr. Montori, for going through this. I do believe that, if we did own that parcel, I think there would be some slight modifications we could do to make it a little better. Ideally, it probably wouldn't be the ideal, but I think, looking for perfect, I don't know if we'll ever get to perfect, but I appreciate everyone going through the efforts to provide us with all these mock-ups of the proposed layouts. That's it for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I think we're still waiting on Mr. Fratalia to rejoin.
Am I here, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, very good. There you are. So,
Okay.
Mr. Fratalia, you're up.
Okay, thank you very much. Lance, thanks again for putting those pictures together. I don't want to burst your bubble, but I didn't like any of them, to tell you the truth. So what I thought we were looking for was a building that was going to be set to the left of the property line, 70, 80 feet, 60, whatever, from the street, with a couple of bays, 3 bays in the front, possibly, and then a couple on the side with parking behind it. But I didn't see that in any of these displays you had. That was never even discussed. I don't think anybody discussed taking away the second floor or third floor, for that matter, and having the building any, longer than what we discussed or what is needed.
Actually, Mr. Fratalia, I don't know if you're able to see the screen, but I believe that was the example they have up on the screen right now. This is
Yes, it is. In this example here.
How far off the street is that darkened area all apron?
Yes, it would be. And the reason for the length of that, quite frankly, is to make sure that we can make the turns on here without impacting the driveway that's shown to the right here, or having the ladder truck pull into Main Street and back out. And we took that as the biggest impetus to try to keep the trucks off the road.
Okay, so that design would show what, 3 in the front and 2 on the side?
Conceptually, that's what this shows. Yes.
Okay, so the 2 in the very back, are they sticking out a lot?
I'm not sure what you mean by sticking out a lot.
Right where your pointer is now, with 2 of the apparatus bays coming out, right?
These would be for yes, these would be for the main pumper truck, ladder truck, and other fire apparatus. And these would be. I'll let Amy talk a little bit more about specifically what these would be programmed for.
Okay, but why is there a jog out there, or is there a jog out there?
I'll have to let the architect.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the jog, do you mean the bays project
Yes.
out more to the side?
Yep.
It's for the depth that we need for the program. We didn't do a full layout of a floor plan. We looked at the design that we have now, the depth of the bays that we have now, the other types of spaces that need to surround the bays and support the bays.
Okay.
And sort of estimated what the floor plan would be, and we needed that space to get the apparatus to fit.
Okay, so what is that apron distance now?
What?
What is the apron distance from that you're showing now for the trucks to turn in and turn back in?
I think it's about 100 feet.
Oh, so 100 feet and they still can't make that turn coming in and backing in?
Yeah, this again, these were very conceptual, and they were based on trying to address some concerns that were raised by the board the last time. And we're showing this apron that's here so to prevent this ladder truck from, in this case, making this movement and pulling onto Main Street out here. We're trying to keep them out of the road here. We're having to pull out to the road and then back in.
Okay. I'm all set,
Again,
Jim.
All right, so I think most of them have sort of gone over the designs that you've shown. I think the most problematic thing here, or at least the thing that I guess we have to come to some final or resolution to, is all of those examples require ownership of a piece of property that the town does not currently own. So I think if we can keep talking about different ways to twist the building and different ways, to put different bays, but I think that's fine in concept, but the only reason to discuss those would be if it's the intention to insist upon the purchase or acquisition of that front parcel, because without it, none of these designs work. And I mean, they're examples, which is fine, but in reality, they can't come into existence without ownership of that front parcel. So if any of the members, if that's the feeling, and I'm not saying whether you should have that feeling or not have that feeling, but I guess I just need to have, I'm looking for a little more clarity amongst the board. If it's in the intention of anyone to insist upon the purchase of that property as a way to put in one of these designs, then I guess it's a different discussion, because we don't own it now. So none of those designs can come into existence right now. And the only way to continue to discuss them would be the ownership of that front parcel being acquired. So I guess I'd before we go on to the next presenter, I guess I'm looking to see if is anybody pushing for that?
Mr. Chairman, Eric here.
Yes.
Yeah, I do have one question to Mr. Montori. As part of your discussions, was there just, I think one important note here is for some clarification, has there been any, I know there's been discussion with the property owner. Was there ever an appraised value on that property? Because that really comes into play with what an eminent domain costs. along with legal fees. Do you have a rough idea what we'd be looking at to potentially acquire that, and a length of time before that would play out in court?
So we never did an appraisal of the property. We only had discussions with the owner about purchasing the land. And when he indicated that he wasn't interested in selling to us, we really didn't go any further than that, because eminent domain, Eric, was never something we contemplated and still are not contemplating.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I wanted that more for the viewers to understand that it is a lengthy process and a costly process.
Yeah, it's going to be, I would think, at least a year because you're going to go through court, you're going to go through appraisals, you're going to go through experts.
Mm-hmm.
I can get, before this meeting ends, I can pull up the assessed value that the assessors have on the property. That's what we usually go by when we're looking at property. But it is a lengthy process, and senior town council, who has spoken to a couple of members, it's not something he would recommend. Okay.
No, and I appreciate that. I just if you could, just so we know, you could pass that number along, what we'd be looking at in a time frame. But also, if you could, in part of your memo that you provided all the board members, also discuss the potential length of time this would take, and what the cost ramifications would be if we did push this out.
Sure. So, if this was not approved tonight, we would need to rethink the approach if we were going to stick with this piece of land, possibly appeal the decision of the board, or rethink another location. Problem we have is the debt exclusion for this project was specific to this location, and the town meeting votes that we brought forward were specific to this location. Mm-hmm. So we have to do a series of new votes, which would have to take place at a future town meeting. Reallocate the money to another location if we can find one. And then you're talking about a brand new design of a building and site evaluation, which before that's complete, you're probably talking at least a year and a half from now before any of that's even complete. And then you're going out to bid. So you're probably delaying this project at best a year and a half, probably 2 years before you are out to bid.
And obviously, if this is prolonged, anticipated costs, anywhere between 3 to 5% annually in construction costs.
Yeah, that's correct. We're projecting about a 5% escalation for each year, which for this project would be about $650,000. We've already spent, as I've outlined in my memo, approximately $816,000 on design and project management. That will have been for naught, and we'd have to spend a like amount to redesign a new building on a new site. So there's a lot of ramifications there.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just trying to do a rough number. This is the chair again. Just a rough number from the stuff that you just kind of rattled off, and I think from the memo that all the members did see. So if I've got it right, between the potential of a redesign of a building on a new site, if that's the way you go, as opposed to purchasing or under some means the front piece of property. A redesign is approximately $800,000 and change. The delay would be about $650,000. The potential of housing, or if one of those sites was, the example in the memo was if it was going back where the fire station is now, I think you had a number of potentially up to $1 million in relocation costs during
Correct.
that time. Okay, so in that version, you're talking about over $2 million on top of the project cost itself. Is that right?
Correct.
At least?
Those are all rough numbers.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. So I'll go on to Mr. Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did, look at some of the numbers that I got from Mr. Montori. I mean, we received this plan from the planning board on February 24th, I believe. That was our first planning board meeting. So I had never seen any plans prior to that till the Saturday before, when we get together the packet. So I have a question for Mr. Montori is, there was no concept plan like any other project that we see in front of the planning board brought to our attention prior to the actual meeting itself. Can you give me a reason why that was?
I really don't have one, Vinny. I just don't have one.
In my opinion, I would be under the impression that if you brought this to us in concept plan months before the actual submission that you wanted to do, some of these issues may have been resolved prior to any of this coming up in the public, and trying to force our hands to have to vote for a May 1st deadline. So I have a hard time, accepting that fact. I don't know why we have to push this thing so quickly through, because, given the situation we have and the state of affairs we have now, all these big construction projects shut down and the Boston and all over. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think that if we were to put this on the agenda for the May 1st bidding cycle, we'd even have any idea when that would actually come into reality. So, I have a really hard time pushing the fact that we have to get this done ASAP. So, so maybe you can address that for me.
Just going back on a couple of things. So, I guess, and I apologize for not bringing this forward as a conceptual plan. I know you've done that. I didn't know if it was a requirement. If it was and we missed it, then I apologize. But I also didn't anticipate any issues with the project because we've had public meetings on it, and I thought it was well known what we were doing. But again, that was something I just didn't think we needed to do. And as far as the bidding, based on what we've talked about with the design team, moving forward with the May date is still something that we believe is advantageous for us, and not wait till everything opens up and be out to bid over the summer. I mean, this is a good time to bid a building project, so people can line the work up, get the work started, be in the ground and have everything ready before the winter, so they can keep working over the winter. So this is usually a good time of year to bid a building project. Now, if the design team has something different, they can throw that in, but that's how we've approached this the whole time.
All right, I just, I don't know, I have a hard time dealing with that situation. And, and I know you mentioned the town articles, Mr. Montori, about the town meeting warrant. I don't recall it being site specific. I know I voted for it because I'm involved in favor of a new firehouse, but I didn't know it was for the 984, 986, and 970 Main Street location only. Because I thought we were still looking at sites.
No, the debt exclusion was very specific, like it usually is. That's how we do all of our debt exclusions. And the warrant articles either had them in the article or in the explanations.
All right. So now, while I have you, Mr. Montori, any news on the lease agreement that was brought up by the parties that own 986 Main Street, Mr. McDonald property?
Yeah, we've not heard back from Mr. McDonald. Senior Town Council sent another letter to them, and we've not heard back. And that's at least 2 letters that he sent to them since he spoke to them.
Okay. All right. I guess I wanted to kind of question to the chief, and I should have asked this first and foremost before we even got started in all this discussion, is how are the firefighters handling all this situation that's going on, and how are their health in bringing the virus, and do they have enough supplies and protection for the firefighters in town?
Yes, thank you for asking. They're doing okay here. There's a lot of adjustments. You know, a lot of us, you know, we've been around for a while, and this is the first time we've seen this. This is my first time in 33 years in public safety seeing something to this degree. The guys are handling it very well, and we're getting equipment in a little slower than we normally do under normal circumstances, but that's understood given the large expanse of this throughout the country. So that's something we are working with our local partners on, with the state and the local EMS services that we utilize, and we're getting through it.
All right. So, Mr. Chief, I have to ask you another question because I received Mr. Montori's email today. Some very disturbing photos of the firehouse that I knew was in disrepair. But I mean, the date of those photos were March 3rd, 2017, when the feasibility study was done. So,
Correct.
So I have to, you know, how long have you been working for the police department, I mean, the fire department, Mr. Hazel?
Since 1988.
And how long have you been chief?
About a little over 8 years now.
All right, so I guess I have to ask you, how are we allowing our firefighters to live and try to work in the conditions that were presented to me today at a meeting? It's horrible conditions. And I can't believe that, you know, and I'm gonna put it on you, chief, because you're the chief, that you would allow that. And why wasn't this pushed in 5, 6, 7 years ago, rather than if there was that bad, that made that long?
This plan originally started back in 2006. So we've been waiting for when that original plan for the fire station to come to be, and it didn't happen at that time. So this is almost 15 years that we've been going through this. The photos that you're looking at aren't much different than they were back then. And I did and have been working under those conditions, as well as the other firefighters that are here. And right now, I would say, you know, we're doing maintenance and repairs and preventive maintenance to keep things going at all 3 of our fire stations. And moving forward, I think one of the things that the guys and myself too were really hopeful that we would be having a new station sooner rather than later. And, you know, I think they share my feelings that putting the capital into a new fire station and having the amenities and a lot of the input of what the firefighters gave for this new building going forward, the money was much better spent there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just jump in.
Mr. Montoni.
Vinny, I appreciate the question, and but I would have to ask that any concern or complaints or criticism be unfair to lay at the chief's feet. That is something that should be on me. The chief, as well as the previous chief, have made the center station an issue every year. And as the fire chief just mentioned, and I'm sure Mr. Fowler can speak to, it goes back to 2006, but in capital budgets, since I've been here, the fire chief has brought forward the center fire station. We have just not had the ability to do anything from a funding standpoint. We had other issues in front of us. We had very difficult fiscal times in 2011 and 2012, didn't start to come out of them until 13. We had the new high school in front of us. There was always something pushing it. No different than the DPW. When you see the DPW, you're going to ask the same questions. How did we ever let it go that long? It's a great question. It goes back probably over 20 years, not just in our time frame. So any criticism, any issues, any problems that lies at my feet, it's extremely unfair to put it on the chief.
All right, Mr. Montoya, with that said, then I will address the email that I got from you today, you know, as far as the pictures and so forth and so on. And it was almost, I took it personally that it was an attempt to push it down our throats. We've been looking at this for about a month, not years. You know, and the conditions have been there for a long time. So, and I firmly believe that if this public presentation was different and put out to the public and the residents of Tewksbury in a public forum, that the majority of those residents would say, we are crazy thinking that we should put that firehouse behind that building. I'm appalled by the pictures you sent me, but you know, I mean, if it's on you, then it's on you. But I mean, that as far as a priority, you know, I'm all for a new fire station. And don't get me wrong, the firefighters in this town deserve the best. So I'm hoping that we can give that to them, if not at you know, today, very soon, because I don't want them here to do any more than they have to. But I don't want you putting that on the planning board members to make a decision for the town in a situation that's been going on for 15 years. And I only seen this plan maybe 2 months ago. So I mean, and that's very tough to put on us, because however we vote tonight is going to affect the firefighters personally, but it's also going to affect the residents of Tewksbury, because we're going to spend $20 million on a site in this present in the location that you want us to give to us going forward. So and that's bothersome to me because of my job as a planning board member. So so I would say that on the record. So.
All right. Mr. Shaw, you all set?
Well, I don't know if this is a good time or not, but you know, I don't know where we're going forward. But I put together a PowerPoint presentation. So if we can take a look at that, and I will have no more comments until the very end of the night. So.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll grab Mr. Fowler in a second. So if you have something to present. That's your presentation we're seeing right now, right, Mr. Fatale?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. If you want to take us through.
Mr. Fowler here. All right. So we got some information from the design team as far as some of the locations that they designed. So photo 1 again explains itself. The Westford Fire Department, a beautiful building with the shows the apron, the office quarters to the left, and so forth. You know, that's I don't know how old it is, but relatively new, a lot newer than ours. Here we go again to the next picture would be the apron, driveway apron, pretty close to the street. You know, again, you know, a nice presentation for the town of Westford. So moving down to the next slide, we have the Chelmsford Fire Department. I mean, you wouldn't know that's a Chelmsford Fire Department unless I was there visiting, because there's no sign on the building saying where you are. If you're a visitor to the community and not sure where you are, here you go by a building and say, well, there's a fire department there, but there's nothing telling us what fire department I'm in or what town I'm in. So I had hoped that we would put Tewksbury on our building at least. So moving on to the next picture is the another side of the Chelmsford Fire Station. You know, a beautiful building, and I want that for Tewksbury as well. A nice little area with some plaques and headquarters, if we can. So, and moving down to the next slide is the fire department of Chelmsford again, with a little parking area to the side for the public to go in, and we may have something similar to that in the back at Bank of America. So again, a nice, relatively new building in Chelmsford. I'm not sure how old it is, but it looks very nice. Moving down to the next one is the Wilmington Fire Department, 5 bays. Again, pretty close proximity to the street, and it's a fire and police safety building with the police station to the left. Looking at the picture, and again, you know, a small apron before they come out. So going down a little bit farther. The next frame is the Reading Fire Department. Again, I think it's a 3-bay station that we see there with pictures, and again, well, pretty observant. That's a Google photo that was taken off Google, showing the Reading Fire Department. And these are all communities that are in the Merrimack Valley that we are always are being compared to, and so forth and so on. So next slide. Is the Andover Fire Department, another nice, beautiful structure. And I'm sure the design we have will look as good. you know, again, if you could see it. So, and again, close proximity to the street, drive by, people know where it is. Next slide would be something that I would be looking for possibly in the town of Tewksbury, where we have a couple of bays in the front. This is the Littleton Fire Department, a relatively new building as well, state of the art, nice visible building, accessible. You know, two bays on front, 2 bays in the front, office area to the right. Next slide down is another photo of the Littleton Fire Department with its sign out front identifying where it is. You know, public access on the right, looking at the building. And then what the next slide shows is the side of the building, which I think we would be entitled to have something like that in town as well, where we have some bays in the front, some bays on the side, accessible and visible from the street. A nice little plaque that we have in town with some flags that'll show the property very well for the residents of town and make it very, very functional as well. So my next slide is again the bays of the Littleton Fire Department with the accordion doors. Phenomenal looking building and very, very accessible to the street and very nice that presents itself to the community. So my last couple of screens are the Billerica Fire Department, Billerica Fire Headquarters. So I would ask Mr. Ryder at this time, while I have him on the line here. Eric, do you know where the Billerica Fire Department is?
Which one? I know there's a couple of them, Vinny. I'm not sure.
Well, this is their headquarters.
Honestly, I do not know.
Okay.
It's
Well,
on Good Street.
I asked you purposely because then I didn't ask Mr. Fowler or Mr. Johnson because being hockey parents, we take our kids to the Hallenborg rink, which is right in the close proximity to the firehouse. So you would see that and know where it is.
Okay.
So not on 3A, which is unbelievable. So that is their headquarters.
Okay.
Again, old building, but I kind of didn't think you were a hockey parent, so you wouldn't really know that. So just as a general resident or that travels the roads, you wouldn't really know where this is unless you drive by it because it's off the beaten path. So what I did when I was doing the fire department for Billerica is I drove from the Chelmsford line on 3A, which I feel is comparable to Main Street in Tewksbury. And there was not one fire department building seen on 3A until from the Chelmsford line all the way to almost the Burlington line, which is right after Cook Street in Billerica. Because this fire headquarters is not visible from the street, and it's an old station as well. So, but that's just an observation as I drove up and down 3A looking for the buildings. So next picture is again Billerica Fire Headquarters again, long apron, probably the longest apron that I've seen from all the buildings. So the next one is a picture that I took from the building itself down the apron to the street, which is a pretty long distance. And then the last one, which is what I'll leave you with, is a Google photo as on a drive-by on Good Street by Google, looking for the firehouse, looking at the firehouse. So, to me, it shows the distance that we're looking at for our firehouse from the street, not including the McDonald house that would be in front of it as well. So you'd have 2 or 3 bays that will be blocked from the street by the McDonald house, looking up the driveway. So, and with that, I will just say, I don't think the residents of Tewksbury want that. After all we've said and done and trying to make this town better, I don't think that design and that use of that site is in the best interest of the residents of Tewksbury. So, all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fowler.
He's muted.
Yeah, I can see it.
I'm letting him
Mr.
know.
Fowler, do we have you there?
I'm messaging him right now.
All All right, so what I'll do is we'll wait for Mr. Fowler to come back on. I'll take my turn then in the meantime. I guess I'm still feel like I'm in the same position I was when I started this round of comments, which is I understand that a lot of the board members still have concerns. I don't discount those. I don't mean to minimize them. What I'm trying to get at this point, though, is are any of the board members at this point simply unwilling to address the presentation on the site as is that's been put forward? Because if that's the case, if any of the members are not going to be okay with that, then I think we need to know that now. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if there isn't anything that's going to get you to yes on the site as it is, with the design generally as it is, obviously there's some issues that we want to talk about and start talking about signaling and those kind of things, and those would all be in the conditions. But if any member feels at this point that the site as it is and the building as it is something that they cannot go forward on, period, I think it'd be best to know that now, because then we need to move to something different, I think. But all this discussion about properties we don't own, designs we can't currently do, that would be the next step, I guess, if we're not going to move forward addressing what's in front of us, I guess. So if anybody's not okay with that, to the point that they know now that there's really no way, if you don't add more property, if you don't change where the building is, that kind of thing, if those things those things can't be done, and you can only vote on or move forward on making a decision on the building and the property as presented, I think it's important that we sort of get to know that now, because that's sort of that's the biggest stumbling block here. We can talk about all the signaling lights we want and all those other things, but ultimately I don't think it's going to matter if, in order to get to yes, we need to acquire another piece of property, or we need to move the fire station to somewhere else, or any of those things. If that's the case, then ultimately, and we know now that this project can't possibly be approved, because as it stands now, all 4 members have to be in agreement, or the project will not be approved. If any member feels that they're not going to be able to do that, it might as well sort of have that on the table now, because I think that's going to answer a pretty huge question. And before I go back around to sort of try to figure that out, to address a couple of things that I think come up as we've had this part of the discussion, in looking through Vinny's slideshow, I mean, obviously those projects, some of them are really nice, but obviously the piece of property they're working with allowed them to design them differently. They obviously look a lot more low to the ground. In most cases, several of those look like they were single story. So obviously, if they're right on the street, they're going to be visible. I don't think, and I think I made this comment in our very first meeting on this, I don't think there's any possibility that anybody's going to miss this building. It is a 3-story building that's going to, the back portion of which is going to tower over everything in front of it. Those renderings I asked for, there was a reason for that. And it also was the reason why I asked about whether or not some, amenities could be added to the top of the building to make them fit a little bit more in the area, is because there is no way this building is not going to be seen. It's huge. I mean, I don't know if we've really gotten a proper grasp of how big this building really is when you think of the stories to it. So I don't think anybody's going to miss it. It's not going to be hidden behind the McDonald's property, and it's certainly not hidden behind Baybank, unless you were standing in front of either of those things trying to see it. But otherwise, that building's huge. It's going to be seen. As far as making sure that it's properly signed, obviously that's important, on the portions you will see, but I don't think there's any chance that building isn't going to be seen. It's pretty big. But that's just my thought on building size. I mean, it dwarfs all those other ones that were in those examples in terms of size. The other question I would have, and only because I would never have thought of this, but in Vinny's presentation, the last one he brought up was Bill Ricker. And that main fire station there is off of 3A. It's not on 3A, it's off. So you have to go up that side street to get onto 3A. So this would be to the chief, and I would ask, do you know of any issues that the Bill Ricker Fire Department has in terms of response time as a result of their fire station, one, not being on 3A, and two, having, at that point, what amounts to a pretty long apron that then leads to a side street before you actually get to a main street in their response time?
Not having specifically spoken with Chief Cole on this, the only thing that I see, and I can certainly ask him that question, but the only problem I see is not so much response time because of where the location is, but when they come out onto Route 3A, there's no traffic preemption there. So they're crossing sometimes 4 lanes of travel, 3 lanes of travel to actually safely get out of Good Street when they have calls.
Right, but to that point, I guess that even sort of backs up more of what I'm trying to get at, which is if they currently have sufficient response times that they feel comfortable with. I would presume if they didn't, they would have gotten a light out there by now. But what I'm saying is they have a pretty long run up before they can even get to a main street and seem to be able to get their response times the way they're comfortable with. That run up between their apron and that street before they can even get to 3A is significantly longer than the run up for this project. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
And they don't have any preemption, which we would have.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me run back through the members again. Because I think we really have to get an answer to that question. So I'll start with Mr. Ryder. Mr. Ryder, at this point, the project as presented, is it something that you think you can move forward on at least making a decision on as presented without asking for, like I said, buying other properties or those kind of things?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been back and forth with this. I've talked to residents. I've also talked with firefighters. I've talked with the administration. Do I think this is the perfect location? No. Do I think even getting that other building in front of us, which is a long shot, that's a long road ahead of us. Do I think getting that is going to make this the perfect location? No. Mr. Fattalia, thank you for going through all that. Some of those, what you presented tonight, I agree. Some of those locations are amazing. They are amazing. I just think, they have a much bigger footprint in a lot of those locations, a little bit more rural location. I think at the end of the day, we really have to look at a couple things. This is a twofold. You have to look at what the firefighters are working in right now, and continuing to work in those conditions. I don't think anyone should work in those conditions. You look what they're doing right now. We need to provide them with a clean facility to work in, something that they can go back and provide them to be productive responders. And the place that we have right now is not that location. As far as the other side of that is our costs, as Mr. Montori put out there. That's a lot of money we're going to expend if we have to walk away from this site. And that's a big concern. I'm a taxpayer. That's close to, $1 million, $1.5 million that we're out. That's significant. I guess my question to the design team here is, and maybe this will help with, some of the concern of Mr. Fratalia, and it may help with some of my concerns about showing the site, I should say the signage. What can be done with signage to present as, and we know the building's there. It is a large building. It's going to tower over the McDonald property. But there hasn't been a rendering of what you plan on putting for a sign out there that is going to make anyone driving down Route 38 know that that's the fire station. That is something that I would like to see. And also, as I talked to Mr. Montori earlier this week, I think that crosswalk, which was discussed last week, is another critical component. That's a critical component to safety for our firefighters. Not only for the firefighters, but also for the the staff that are potentially walking back and forth from town hall to the fire station. Those are critical. We will have signals, signalized intersection there. We could put in pedestrian crosswalk there with a signalized intersection. But I think, I just don't know if it's the perfect location, but are we ever going to get to the perfect location when we put response time versus cost of construction if we push this out, cost of a new piece of property if that becomes available? If you look at the last feasibility study, do we have that perfect piece of property? We haven't seen it. We have to work with what we have. And what we have is they've done a great job with the parcel that they have. Is it the perfect property? No, it's not. But I'm really concerned that we keep kicking this can down the road. And I don't know. I'm considering to continue to listen to the rest of my board members, but I don't know if I'm ready to waste the money that we've spent to date.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Fowler.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. A lot of the ideas that Vinny talked about, I agree with. Some of the plans, the pictures he showed of the buildings that have been built in the area, I agree with. Mr. Montori told me, I asked him, why did we not build the property on where the present fire station is back in '06? And he said the person that owned the land next door wanted too much money for his two-family house. Well, this is the plan of the land of the fire station that was supposed to go there on the present fire station. That's it. Two-story building in the front for the headquarters, administration, and the quarters for the firefighters and training. The training and their living quarters. The rest is six bays on the apron to the front. I know I said this to Mr. Montori, if that had been built then, we wouldn't be having these discussions now. There are some things that bother me about this new station proposed. Number one is the pole. I asked the chief if he could tell me where we could see poles that are being used today, and such as what's designed for this one. He really couldn't. He told me about ones in Okay, but no Winchester, I said that name before. But it's a two-story station, and the pole was, I think, 14 feet long. All the bays, all the doors faced Main Street. But the two poles that we're talking about were, Littleton has a 9-foot pole. I think the chief said that this was going to be a 20-something foot pole on 2 sections. No one can tell me about this. No one can. I called the manufacturer, and they couldn't send me to any place where there was a pole designed like this. I'd like to read something. Quotes from different people about the rise and fall of the fireman's pole. Is the title of the subject. There was a pole in my fire station I consider one of the most dangerous things we have in the building. He goes on. So where is the future firefighters' poles? It says fireman's here, so I'm going to say firefighter. Stand. The National Fire Protection Association, the overreaching organization that sets standards and codes in place, has called the removal of all poles from the U.S. stations due to safety hazards. The organization hopes to phase them out completely as firehouses are remodeled into single-story units. The poles that do remain will be required to include safety enclosures and mats, so nobody stumbles into it in the middle of the night, as the association president puts it. It's just unless someone could show me specifically where there's a pole such as the one that's designed for this station, I can't support this. I asked about the last meeting we had about the traffic on coming out of East Street in front of the bank, Bank of America. And there's nothing planned, although I read something today that they still want to have a design to see if the DOT, Mass DOT, if they would be willing to have a design plan for Route 38, Pleasant Street, and East Street. No, I'm not hearing that. I'm not seeing it. I don't see it happening. If you could follow, I drew a plan here myself just to use, but when you're going south to north on Route 38, you're driving down, you're going right by the Pleasant Street, you're going by East Street, you're going by Bank of America, and then the entrance to the proposed fire station. Everybody knows how difficult it is to come out of East Street, even though there's a stop sign there. Probably the most abused stop sign in Brookfield. When you come out of that stop sign, you have to look way over your shoulder to look down to see if there's anybody coming. Now you're going to have, and that's right in front of the driveway for Bank of America. And it's not only someone coming by you that wants to go take a right turn into Bank of America, going south to north, right in front of you. But there's also people coming the other side of the highway, going from north to south, taking a left turn into that bank. Now we're going to add a driveway for the fire station, which is, I believe, going to compound it. The numbers were 10 cars an hour coming out of East Street. I'm sorry, going into the bank, and also proposed 10 cars an hour going into and out of the fire station. That's going to be pretty busy. I like the idea of the lights that they proposed there, but that was just now. I mean, the state, we talked about what are you going to have for lights? Nothing. No comment. So I'm not happy with this. As much as I spent 34 years in that fire station. Well, in that fire station, in the South Station, and the old South Station, which was worse. And the new, never worked in the new South Station because that was designed after I retired. But the North Station was there also. So I spent 34 years, and I know what that station. I helped put up that mezzanine, the beam inside, just to put for storage. Because you're right, we didn't have the money. That building was probably the worst maintained building in the town. Just kept cutting budgets. Well, this is where we are now. So, and I support this? Not really. I would rather you lay it on the table and come to a better conclusion. I'd rather not say no, as well as I can't say yes. So, that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fratelli.
Well, given all the information that we've seen, I would like to actually put it on the table as well, delay it till we find out some more information regarding the lease agreement possibly. I don't have a problem with the location of the site itself if we were to secure the McDonald property and not have a firehouse behind a 2.5-story building. So with that said, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn this meeting or postpone it, continue it, because I am not happy with the design and the location as well. So.
All right, so we still have to open this up to the public. We still have to.
Mr. Johnson, what about you? I don't hear anything.
I'm going to in a second. I'll just because you asked, you were saying about ending the meeting. I just want to clarify that.
Continue it. I'm sorry.
Right. So there would be some things we still have to get through before we get to that point. My personal opinion, I guess I come down on this a little bit similar to Mr. Ryder, which is I don't think it's perfect, but with the discussions we've had to this point, factoring in property that the town owns, where the fire station, as I understand it, in what area it needs to be placed generally in order to keep the run times where the fire department wants them to be, the cost that we've outlaid to this point, the amount of money that the town voters have already approved, knowing where the fire station was going to be, the cost that the town's going to incur if we do not move forward with this site, whether it be because we move to requesting that a completely different site be used, or the expense and time that's going to accumulate by trying to take a piece of property that someone's not at present willing to part with, because that process is going to be lengthy. It's going to be expensive, because I think some people may think of eminent domain as, the municipality takes something and sort of take it and leave it. Generally, you pay top dollar for something when you do it that way, which means you're going to pay the top price for the property when you finally get it, and you're going to go through a lengthy and expensive process to do so, which to me, even if we got that piece of property, the width of this is really where a lot of the problems come in terms of changing any kind of design to the building. But even if we got that front piece of property, it would seem that people would be advocating for a complete redesign of the building, which means now add that cost on top of all of this as well. And I don't know. I mean, there's no way for us, beyond those who call into the meeting, to have residents chime in on their feelings about that amount of, additional cost associated with a fire station that I don't think anybody at this point disagrees we need a fire station. That part I feel like everybody agrees with. The rest, there would appear to be disagreement, but that part I think we all agree on across the board. So I mean, I know I've sat in enough town meeting when we've gone round and round for a long time over the cost of things. And, you know, knowing that they've approved this for this spot to this point, to render a decision that would, in all cases, result in additional expenses to the town, I would only do that if I felt like they cannot make this site work. And I feel like they've at least presented to me that the site can work. It's not perfect, but I feel like the site can work, you know, with some things that we've asked for to make sure that the way they get out on the main street are addressed and those types of things. I will defer to Mr. Fowler. I'll defer to the chief on things like the fire pole. I got to say, I'm at a loss to that because I don't have any experience with that. So someone else would have to explain why the poles work or don't work in terms of an internal design issue. But beyond that, the rest of it, I feel like they've presented with the site they have, a site the town controls, and how it's been presented. I'd be, you know, again, with some of the things we've asked for, if those are included, I'd be okay with moving forward with the site without asking for additional property or moving the fire station. But ultimately, that's just, you know, that's one member, and, you know, in reverse, any one of the four of us that isn't happy makes this not possible to move forward. So I think we go back to what I think we left the last meeting with, which was, if we can't explain what gets us to yes, then I'm not sure what prolonging the meetings and continuing the meetings will do, other than drag out a final decision. You know, I think we have to have something that we can give the proponents to say, do this or do these things, and I'm prepared to move forward, or there is nothing you can do. There is nothing you can do, at which point we probably need to move to, you know, rendering a decision so that the next step in the process can happen. But I'm not sure if we tabled it the last meeting in order to take a look at some things. I thought when we came back this time that we gave them sort of what we were looking for. And if we, you know, they provided the designs and explained some of the issues with it. Okay. But if we can't say do X, Y, and Z, that would solve my concerns about this project. If there isn't an X, Y, and Z to give them, you know, again, talking about this piece of property, I think buying another piece of property before this moves forward is tantamount to giving them a denial for this project that's being presented, because I don't think it's realistic to table this matter until they can purchase a piece of property on the front and add it to it. That becomes a different thing, I think, at that point, especially if anybody's considering moving the building on site once we acquire that property, if we were to acquire it. So if there isn't an X, Y, Z that we can give them to come back with and say, okay, we've done it, you know, I hope that, you know, I hope it meets your expectations. If there isn't an X, Y, Z, then I'm not sure what, you know, continuing this to the next meeting or a meeting beyond that, if we can't tell them what it is we want. And if we say what we want and they say we can't do that, okay, but I think we have to tell them what that is. And if we can't, then we, you know, I think we have to move forward with, you know, issuing a decision on what's in front of us. Because I think there's too many variables that we're throwing out there to have just sit out there with continued meetings. I don't think they're realistic. I mean, when we've had other hearings, and we tell somebody we want them to do something on site and come back to us with a change or a modification, remove a building, add a driveway, add some parking spaces, that's fine. But that's within the four corners of the property we're talking about. You know, when we're talking here with adding other pieces of property, or should we move the fire station to somewhere else, I think that goes beyond the scope of what's presented. And if that's how we feel, or if that's how the board's going to render its decision, I think that is the decision then, that this project is not going to go forward. And we tell the petitioners that, rather than continuing it without giving them an attainable, marching orders to come back with. I mean, I'm fine with continuing a meeting, as long as when they come back, there's the expectation that there's something for them to come back with. Otherwise, we're just tabling it for the sake of not making a decision. And I don't think that does anybody any good if we just continue to push off a decision that ultimately someone may already know they're going to make, because there isn't a way to get to yes. So that's where I think I come down on it. I don't know if before I ask any of the board members anything else, I give an opportunity for the proponents, if anybody wants to add anything at this point. You guys we've talked for a while, so I'd like to see if there's anything for anyone there to respond with.
I think we're all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. So with that, I guess I'll ask, and I'll go around one more time then. Is there, within the four corners of what was presented to us, do the members have something that they want to ask the petitioner to provide that would get them comfortably to a position where they think they could render a decision on the project? If we go through those now, if there isn't, then I feel like we need to move forward and make a decision, because I don't know where we go from there otherwise. So I guess I'll go in reverse this time. I'll start with Mr. Fratalia.
I'm all set to vote.
Okay, but just to clarify, when you say that, do you mean to vote just to complete the process, or did you mean that, so there is nothing more that you'd ask them to provide you for the project as submitted? Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. Mr. Fowler.
Questions?
I'm sorry?
I have a couple. Can you hear me?
I can now, yes. Go ahead.
Yes, I have one or two questions. Everybody keeps saying there isn't another parcel within which to build a station. Well, I'd beg to differ with that. I'd like to ask Mr. Montori if he has had the opportunity to talk to the owner of the parcel to the left of the present fire station since we last talked.
Mr. Chairman, I have not.
So, and am I correct in saying when you or someone from the town talked to him within the past month, no dollar figure was given for what he wanted for the property?
I have not spoken to the owner of that property in quite some time. I think if someone reached out to him, I'm not sure what the discussions were, but I have not. Because the site that we want to build the station is the site we're presenting. We don't think the site of the current station is a better site. We think the site that we're proposing is. It's a difference of opinion, but we're not going to agree on it.
No. I guess we can agree to disagree then.
Yeah, just fine.
Yep. And the plans for the station that was designed in '06 looked so much similar to the ones that have been built in the last 10 years in and around this, our town. But I guess two things here. I believe you said his price originally was too high. I don't know what it was. And I don't want to know what it was. And the other aspect is I believe, well, I heard something 2 days ago that the reason that we didn't build a station with a plan, any plan, where the present station is that two members of the Board of Selectmen passed, didn't want it there. No, that's the first time I've heard that. And that's kind of disappointing when the station's been there since 1965. And I don't ever recall a time when there was a problem getting in and out of there. Although I did point out, and I'm surprised no one knew it, that the light in front of the fire station going out, pointing up Pleasant Street towards Whipple, isn't working correct. So that's probably why the cars are stacking up and getting in the way of the engines and the ambulances. So two things happen then. They don't stop the traffic from coming down, and it doesn't give a green light out front so that to clear the traffic that's on the, from Route 38 to the fire station. So that's not clearing out. So why that, how long that's been like that, I don't know. But that's a problem for another day. That's it.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Fowler, just for clarification. So what I think you just described, if you're talking about moving the fire station to a different site, that requires all the new votes at town meeting. You wouldn't be using this design. So that's where you're coming down though. That's what I want.
Well, if you're going to spend X number of dollars to try to get land that you're probably not going to get expeditiously, then what's the next alternative? Go to where it was supposed to go, or where it is now.
Okay, but one of those two things is what you would want. You are not okay with the present submission, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so that leaves me with Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. I think one thing that I would like to see, if this does go to another meeting, would be the signage that's going to be out on 38. I think that may address some of the concerns. I hope it does. That will address a couple of my concerns, as Mr. Johnson stated earlier, and I will echo. I think we can get there with the site. As far as the internals of the fire station, I'll agree. It's not my job. I'll leave that up to the chief, and that's his expertise and his staff. That's something that they can work through if there's any modifications that need to be had. But unfortunately, I think putting that on the Pleasant Street site that it currently exists, I think that's impacting that even further with what the new school's being put down there. I don't think that's a good location for that. Just my opinion. I know it exists currently, but we do not have that new school in place, and anything we can do to soften that impact of that location, that street in that intersection is going to be critical. So I think if with a few things, we can make the best of that site. But I think there's some things that we really need to do to make it safe and make that location stand out and try and meet all the expectations of the residents.
All right. For my purposes, as I said, I mean, there are definitely things that I think, that we still need to, cross T's and dot I's on. But ultimately, the site itself, I'm satisfied at this point that that site could move forward as the place for the fire station. Obviously, we're not going to have 4 members in agreement on, making any decision tonight that would approve the project. I guess I would ask, I'm going to throw it out to the audience in a second, but I guess I would ask the petitioners this. We have one more meeting that comes up this very following week. So it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be very long. So there really isn't, you're not really being asked to provide anything new, except for a couple of smaller items. There isn't any big item that you can do. My personal feeling is, while I feel like I know how this is trending, that rather than render that final decision tonight, to continue it to the next meeting with the expectation that one way or the other, that we're either going to render a decision on the petition or the presentation as made going forward, or denying the application, rather than doing that tonight. But obviously that's up to the other members. It's up to them. But if the petitioners want us to render a decision tonight, I'd ask them to tell us so. If not, I'll then leave it up to the members what we do.
Mr. Chairman, if I thought between now and Monday I could address the concerns that I've heard tonight from Mr. Fratalia and Mr. Fowler, then I could see pushing it off to Monday. But unfortunately, I just can't do that, or we just can't do that. And I'm sorry about that, because I have a great deal of respect for both of them. But I just can't address their concerns. I wish I could. So I just don't think anything is going to change between now and next Monday. I think I'm going to waste a lot of your time and the committee's time, as well as the consultants.
Okay, so with that, we've kind of gone back and forth here. So I don't know, do we have anyone on the line waiting to comment?
We do not have anyone.
Okay. Obviously, I'll stretch it for a second here just because of the delay. So let anyone who's listening know that they could call in if they wanted. But I guess I'm going to bring it to the board in a second to see what their feelings on this is. My only concern is this, is that I understand that it doesn't sound like we're going to get to a point where this is going to be resolved, where the project's going to move forward. I have that feeling, whether that's this week or it's next Monday. My only concern is the really odd circumstances in which these meetings are being held. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. We're doing it as the best way we can, and we're doing it, in following all the rules that we're supposed to follow. However, we do have a lack of normalcy in what's going on, in terms of being in town hall, where people kind of just walk in, on the night of a meeting, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I'll say, there's nothing wrong with the way we're doing it. I'm just noting the oddity of the situation, and whether or not we're able to get as much comment from the residents as we might have otherwise gotten if we were, in town hall as normal, would be one of the reasons why I would just ask whether or not we consider just pushing it to the next meeting, just so the opportunity, the word sort of gets out and about. If anybody wants to find a way to get their comments in, that we're not cutting those off, that's all. Obviously, this is the best way we can do it, and I'm okay if that's not the case. I just throw it out there as a consideration for everyone as to whether or not they wonder if they would be swayed or not swayed, depending on the amount of public comment that some people might want to make but not realize how to do, or whatever. And that was why, one of the reasons I was considering whether or not it made sense, before we render a final decision, to give it that one more week. If nothing changes, it's a pretty quick process on Monday. But again, I leave it up to the rest of the board members how they feel they want to how they feel they want to move forward. But I just want to throw that out there for consideration, to whether or not that makes sense, to give just a little more time for people to maybe write in, email in, whatever, if they have any thoughts. But I will not, I'm not going to hold up the process for that reason. I just wonder if it's something we should consider. With that, I've certainly stretched things out long enough.
We do have a caller. Okay, yeah.
That's why I saw that come up. So I've definitely stretched it out long enough for people to call in. We do have someone. If we could have them give their name and their address, and then we will hear their comments.
You're on.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, if you just state your name and your address, please.
Yep. It's Joel Sylvester, 1 Chelm Road, Tewksbury. So to start, I just, full disclosure, I just wanted to note that I am on the fire department. I have been for the past 5 years. And I currently sit as being president of the firefighters union. As I listen to the meetings that you guys are having, obviously a lot of the same concerns are coming up that for the past 3 meetings. So what I wanted to say is we would be, or personally, I'd be very disappointed if the station doesn't go forward. I believe it's something that we as we talked, or you guys have talked in the meeting in great length, the station is something the town needs, and it has almost become the fire department's turn to get the new station, whereas we have many other projects going on in town and want to continue to go on in town. So it's very, I guess, disheartening to see that we're gone to our point where it's our turn to go forward with the station. It's kind of stalled at this point. I completely understand of everybody on the board. I completely understand where it's coming from. It was something that I was looking forward to get this new station because it really helps with the growth of the department and us to be able to have a training facility in our own station and being able to do stuff without leaving the station and have the availability to have classes at the station and stuff like that. I guess as a citizen, what concerns me is the price tag that I guess we're leaving on people. Close to $1 million to just walk away from a project, which I understand that there will be more stuff going forward, but it's just, I guess, very concerning for that amount of money just give up on something. But any questions for me, willing to answer them as well.
Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to pose to the resident?
I would, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Rada.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to know, you're speaking obviously as a resident, also as a firefighter. What is the thought of the body? Obviously, this is a critical topic that's happening within the fire department. What is the rest of the body speaking? Is it a divided? Is it in favor? Obviously, this has been discussed. Can you share that?
So if I heard that question correctly, he's kind of asking where the body stood on the issue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I believe I don't for the body as a whole. I believe that there are some members of the department that have their own opinion on this, and which I very much respect. But I believe the majority of the department would be upset to see that this station is going to take another potentially 5 years before we see it. So instead of something that we were hoping to have in the next year, to have these nice new amenities to go from what we're going from to go to this with something that I believe a lot of the members were looking forward to. Of course, there are people that disagree with that as well because there is some concerns with the site, but I believe the majority does agree with me, but I do not speak for everybody.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to pose? All right, hearing none. Does the resident have any other comments he'd like to make?
No, that's all I had. I understand, obviously, it's you guys' responsibility to really look into the project and do it, so I respect what
on his end. So, and as well as the town manager and the chief, they really done a good job in putting forward the project. So I'll be listening in to see what you guys have. All right, thank you.
All right, do we have anybody else who's called in?
That was the only caller.
All right, very good. So just before I take it to the board, and having heard, the comments from the board members and whatnot, I'll ask just one last time. The petitioners would
I believe we lost a few people, including the chairman.
Hi, Eric. This is Lance from PAR. I'm still on. I'm not sure who else is.
Yeah, hi, Lance. I believe I'm here. I think Chief Hazel's here.
I'm here. Dawn.
Dawn. Hi, Dawn.
Hi. I don't know what happened.
All of a sudden, everyone
Everyone went boof.
we're still here. I don't know if we're still live on TV or not.
Brian or Jason?
We are still live.
Okay.
Trying to see what the issue is right now. I apologize.
All right.
Okay.
You, Jason.
Thanks.
We are still live.
Are we still on?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. I don't know where we dropped pretty much everybody, I believe, for a second there.
Yes.
So let's give it a second while we figure out who we've got back. Mr. Ryder, do we have you?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fowler, do we have you?
No, we lost Bob.
All right.
Oh, yes, there's Bob. He's just.
Bob.
All right. So we have Mr. Fowler back. Mr. Fratalia, are you back as well? We'll give it a second for Mr. Fratalia to rejoin us so that we have everybody from the board back.
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
very
Vince.
good.
I just
All
put
right.
it on mute.
All right. No problem.
You lost your video.
All right. Do we have the town manager? We have Mr. Sadwick.
That good, Don?
Yep.
I'm on, Steve.
All right. So when I left it, I don't know if anybody even heard what I was saying at that point, but I'll reiterate it. I was asking if I was giving the petitioner one last chance to comment on whether or not they want us to render a decision tonight or not.
You know, I would wait till the town manager comes back on, but it looked like that's where it was trending towards. And I think, Chief, you can chime in also, but I think that the town manager was interested in a vote this evening.
Yes, I believe so.
I'm back now.
Okay.
There he is.
So we're just checking. I was checking one more time to make sure that it's your preference that we close the hearing and render a decision this evening, rather than continue it to the next meeting before I open it up to the board members to see what they wanted to do.
I think so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Then I'll run around the board then. Mr. Fowler, what is your preference for us this evening?
He's muted.
No, I know, I saw it.
Yeah.
Give him a second to get back on.
Jason, can you unmute him?
There we go. Mr. Fowler, is your preference to close and vote this evening or to continue?
I would rather continue it. I don't know how much more we can do.
Okay.
But I would rather continue it.
All right, Mr. Fratalia.
I'm willing to make a vote.
Okay, Mr. Ryder.
You know, I, as you said earlier, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to continue this if we're not, I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to waste any more cost. Obviously, the more we have to do here, there is an expense to that. And if we can't get to, we need all 4 votes here. And if we can't get the questions answered, I don't want to waste the administration's time nor the consultant's time. So I think that's the big question. If we can't get past any of these things, as you stated, Mr. Johnson, I don't know what else to do.
Okay. My feeling on it is this. I mean, I do sort of see where we look like we're ending up, but I do have that hesitation because I do like the idea of this, because the next meeting is only a week away, and I'd like to have just that extra little bit of time just to see if any residents choose to reach out under another medium, whether it's, emailing into the board or, calling in and registering any comments that, because they find out what was going on this evening after the fact, because they weren't able to, or maybe didn't realize for whatever reason, how to go about doing this. We've had enough technical glitches, as we just did a few moments ago, where it seemed like we were all gone, and then we're back and continuing. So to me, I just as soon continue it one more meeting, while I realize there isn't really anything for the petitioners to there's no marching orders for them between now and then necessarily, unless something comes up and they choose to, provide something else. But that little bit of extra time, just in case there's any resident comments come in that may or may not sway anyone, I'd rather give it that little extra time and find out that there aren't any than to not and find out after the fact that, people said, gee, I really wish I had had an opportunity. I didn't know how else to do it, or I didn't realize what was going on. It's only a week, so to me, we're not overburdening, the delay to the town and what their next steps are really by waiting a week. But that's my feeling. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Saylor.
Quick question. If this does look like it's going to move towards a continuance, being that there really isn't any new information to present, is it possible that you would consider one of the earliest time slots possible on the agenda? Because I don't see where there would be a lot of discussion. I mean, I think you're looking to receive resident input, and I don't know what more you'd be looking for. The draft conditions have been provided to both the board and us as the applicants, so that's already on the table for consideration.
Okay, well, if this is continued, then I would suggest that we would continue to 7:01, which would put it ahead of everything else that's currently on the next agenda, unless I'm mistaken. But I believe the agenda time started at 7:02. I don't have that.
This is Ann McGinty, the town planner. So you could schedule it for 7:01.
Okay.
Would be fine.
All right, so then with that, I'll entertain a motion from the board members for however they wish to proceed.
Mr. Johnson,
Mr. Fowler.
the only question that was left was, it hasn't been addressed, is Mr. Ryder was hoping that we would have some sort of, I don't know, not to speak for him, but signs, where the sign would go, what it would say, and if it could be seen from the street without blocking the view of people driving, coming out of those two driveways.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. However, obviously, as I stated earlier, I don't want to, if this is something that's not going to go, obviously I don't want to incur another expense on the town. I think if the decision is to move forward with this, I think that obviously this being a town project, I think we can work towards a resolution of a sign that is going to meet all those requirements, that will be visible in all directions, not block any sight lines, and there's a potential that we could put not only, you could do something where I've seen signs across the street directing, coming from both directions, north, west, and east on Main Street, that you could have one directing. So I think we could get past that from, it's just I don't want to waste any more time and money of the consultant, sir.
Yeah, I think this is the chair again. I think to Mr. Ryder's point, getting an answer to his question on the sign would be productive, but only if, and I don't want to put words in it, but my understanding from our polling before was that Mr. Fowler and Mr. Battaglia don't feel that there's a way to go forward to get yes for the project as submitted. And that's why we don't have anything further to give the petitioners to come back with. So having them come back with Mr. Ryder's questions about a sign does seem counterproductive unless it was going to go forward. To me, it was really more about just giving a little bit more of a delay to provide, an opportunity if there's any other resident comment or if any other developments were to happen between now and the next meeting that changed anything.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I mean, I can see where we seem like we are as well. And if I thought the delay was going to be lengthy and not just a week, I would probably just push for, closing the hearing and rendering a vote. My feeling for continuing was only because it's such a short amount of time. And it was more just to see if anyone's opinions changed or any situation changes between now and then, or if perhaps there was enough resident comment that, changed anyone's mind. But short of that, expecting that our next meeting, we would more than likely close the hearing and, issue a decision. So I guess I'm back to where I was before, which is looking for a motion to either close the public hearing or to continue it to our next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd like
Yes,
to make
Mr.
a motion to close the hearing. It appears the applicant is looking for that as well. So,
Okay, so I have a motion made to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, I'll go around the room. Mr. Battaglia,
yes.
Mr. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Ryder,
I would prefer to delay one more week.
and the chair votes no as well. So 2-2. So then I would suggest, I would ask if we have a motion to continue the hearing to our next meeting on the 13th at 7:01. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Do I have a second? The chair will second it. So go around the room. Mr. Ryder,
Yes.
Mr. Fowler,
Yes.
Mr. Fratalia,
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. So this matter will be continued to 7:01 on April 13th. It'll be the first thing we take up on the next agenda, and we will see where we are at that point. And with that, I believe we have completed this evening's agenda items. We took care of our those two changes to our future meetings. Unless town planner has any items that I'm forgetting, which he wants to remind me of that I was supposed to deal with tonight.
Mr. Chairman, nope,
Yes.
I don't have any more items.
All right.
Well, actually, sorry, this is for next meeting.
Yes.
The zoning article is just for
Oh, that's
anyone listening. They were scheduled for next week's meeting. However, we're suggesting they be continued to May 11th because the town meeting was continued.
Yeah, I think that's what we'll do because we have enough on the agenda for next week. We don't need to get bogged down in the moving of the town meeting. So I think everybody should expect that we will continue those to our following meeting.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Rada.
Yeah, thank you. I just would appreciate if you can, obviously, we understand these are the meetings being presented in a different format than normally. And maybe if it's something that we can put on as part of the agenda, that there is the ability for residents to call in that may not be aware of what's happening and be able to voice their opinion. I think that is critical in this project. And if we can get that out sooner than later, I think that may help.
Okay. I mean, it is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the postings as they've gone out, both on the local access, in the papers, on the website, all list the manner in which the meeting's being held and the ways in which residents can call in. I can see it in front of me on the TV that it stays up on the screen on the public broadcast for how they call in to comment as well. Beyond that, I'm not sure. To me, in this case, it's more, I'm thinking in terms of word of mouth after the fact. If people who were never going to log on or, watch on TV, find out how the meeting's going and what's going on, and we're choosing to find another way to register their comments, we were giving them just a little more time to do so in, a less immediate way, whether it be email or something like that. That was my thought. But I think we've put it out there in as many ways as I think we can. I'm not sure where else to put it, unless someone from the town has a suggestion for a way to alert residents beyond what we're doing. I don't know what else. I don't know what else we can do. So I don't think there's any additional comments. But so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. We will see you on the 13th at our next meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.